Well, hello to you all, and welcome back to Guitar of Adam HQ. A very warm welcome. So, in today's quick licks, we're going to dive headfirst into an issue that has plagued the guitar community for centuries, and that is, why won't you do what you're supposed to do? So if you're anything like me, when you first try out bar chords and you really get into this, you'll have this very common issue of fretting out. And that's simply where you're playing the fret and you're barring as hard as you can, yet you still hear this pesky sound. And that is the equivalent of someone dragging their fingers down a whiteboard. I know, it's grotesque. So we're going to look at a 3-step guide to achieve the perfect bar chord every time. Now let's just start at the top. What is a bar chord, very briefly, and why would we need them? So a bar chord is a shape that is movable across your fretboard. Think of it as a Swiss Army knife of the chord world. You can learn 2 or 3 different shapes and you can actually play any chord sequence really within reason. So just to prove that, we've got a major shape here and we're rooted on the 5th fret of the low E. That's an A note. Therefore, that's an A major. If I move it up 1 shape, so I've not changed anything other than where I'm actually placed on the fretboard. I'm now on the 6th fret, and that's now an A sharp or a B flat, depending on where you're looking from, and that is now a major chord as well. For the sake of learning 1 shape, I was able to play multiple types of chord there. Conversely, if I change that to a minor shape, so I've now removed my middle finger, I can now play the minor variations of the same chord. So A minor, B flat minor, B minor. You get the drift. Now for further study, check out the cage system. And this is the idea that if you've learned what are known as your cowboy shapes, so your open position chords, so C, A, G, E, D. Yeah, I can spell. If you can learn those shapes and you already know them, the idea is you can stick a bar in front of it and you can now use them as Swiss Army knives across your fretboard. So for example, the shape that I just showed you there was derived from the open E major chord. All we're doing is we're substituting that open low E for a fretted low E, which is obviously where the bar comes into play. Bar itself is where it gets tricky. The concept is fairly straightforward, I'm sure you'll agree. But the bar is where it gets pretty tricky because it's the physical aspect of actually laying your finger across multiple strings at once and holding them down tight so you can get the full resonance of the chord without muting it. So you have a few variations of the bar chord. So you can have a half bar, so that's where you're barring from the G, B, and E strings. And then a full bar, so that's all 6 strings. So this is where it gets tricky, but I'm going to go through my 3-step guide to get the perfect bar every time. However, terms and conditions time, little fine print at the bottom of this video. Music and guitar playing is a performance-based activity. So think of an athlete and imagine walking into the gym and seeing the biggest guy or gal bench pressing an incredible amount of weight and you thinking, well, I want to do that. There's no reason why I can't. Well, actually, do you think they were able to do it the first time they stepped into the gym? Probably not. The idea is that you have a lot of time, perseverance, you keep training the correct things, all of the peripheral elements of your life are in order, so good nutrition, you're sleeping well, you're not going out partying every night of the week. So it's all of these additional things plus the addition of time in the equation that will get you to your performance orientated goal. So there is no difference if we just spin this back into guitar world again, there is no difference there. We are expecting extraordinary things of our fingers and our bodies, so we must equate for the time and perseverance that needs to go in behind the scenes. Okay, terms and conditions over. Step number 1, when we're barring, and we're going to use this 5th fret major shape as our example. So we're barring on the 5th fret and we're playing 7, 7 of A and D and 6 of G with our 2nd finger like so. First thing we're going to do, we're going to imagine that the fret is actually sticking outward like this. Now because of that, it's going to create a corner right here. Now that's where our finger wants to go. So imagine there's the corner and we're sticking our finger right in there. Not on the fret itself, because we're going to get back into the mute territory, but as close into that and tug that fret as close as we can in that pretend corner. Now the reason that's really useful is it actually closes down the distance that our finger needs to push to get the string down. The aim of the game here is to firmly clamp the string to the fret itself. Now if we're putting our fingers closer to the fret, we're actually closing down that distance and we're not having to make our fingers work quite as hard. Step number 2, we're going to use what I like to call the bony part of our fingers. Now if I hold up my fretting hand, it's this side here, so the outside part. Now if you run your finger up and down like so, you will look really weird doing that first of all. And second of all, you'll notice that it's not very sensitive. When you really push down, dig down, it kind of feels numb. Is that me? Maybe there's an issue. But if you compare it to the center of your finger, there's much more sensitivity to touch there. So if you think about applying a lot of pressure of a string, a metal string running into that, ouch, especially over a prolonged amount of time. So use the outside part of your finger because it's stronger. So if I do both steps together, I'm tucking my fingers close into that fret, the imaginary corner as possible, and I'm using the outside part of my finger. So I am kind of rolling to the outside, not in, not flat, slightly out. And then that brings us to step number 3, and we're going to use opposing forces. In other words, we're going to leverage the guitar in our favor. So when we hold the body of the instrument, we're kind of hugging it, right? So we've got our arm, our strumming hand around the body of the guitar. So when we do that, the neck instinctively wants to push out. Now we're going to use that to our advantage because when our fretting hand wants to push into the string on the neck and the neck wants to push out, that creates an opposing force. Therefore, we're going to create a tighter clamp like so. So I'm really, if you notice my hand, my arm here is pushing that neck out. And because it's pushing out, my hand isn't going anywhere. So it's actually pushing further into my hand. So there you have it, your 3-step guide to get the perfect bar chord technique. Step 1, hug the corner of the fret. Step 2, use the bony part of your finger. And then number 3, show your guitar some love, give it a nice big hug and use that leverage to push down further into the neck itself. Your challenge to know that you've done this correctly and you're on the path to glory is to be able to arpeggiate every single note of that chord and not hear a single dead note or mute. Phew. So on that note, I will love you and leave you. Please do hit the subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up. It really does help. And please do comment below. I'd be genuinely interested to hear if you've got any personal techniques and tips and tricks when it comes to creating the perfect bar chord. This wasn't a deep dive into bar chords per se, but more the mechanics of how to do a bar. So if you want to learn a little bit more, if you want me to explore these with you, please put a comment below and I'll happily make a video on that. So in the meantime, until the next video, guys, please take care out there and I'll catch you on the next one.